The reflection in the salon mirror barely resembled the old Sophia Chen. Gone were the honey-highlighted waves and designer clothes that had once defined her. In their place, a sharp black bob framed her face, while a carefully curated wardrobe from Taobao created the image of new money from Seoul. Hong Soo-jin, her manufactured identity, was born. Perfect, murmured Mi, her only friend who'd stayed loyal through everything. As a junior reporter at the Straits Times, she'd been instrumental in helping Sophia craft her new persona. You look exactly like those Korean tech heiresses Marcus loves chasing. Sophia touched her hair, remembering how Marcus used to run his fingers through it. Has he taken the bait? Mi checked her phone. Your accidental run-in at Le Vi last night is already making waves. 3 investment chat groups are buzzing about the mysterious Korean crypto princess who's looking to diversify into Singapore tech. The past 2 months had been a crash course in reinvention. By day, Sophia worked at a tech startup, absorbing everything she could about corporate operations. Her nights were split between gathering intelligence at her bartending job and meeting with other victims of Harrison and Marcus's schemes. Mr. Lim from Asia Corp had been skeptical at first, but the evidence on the SD card had convinced him. Now he was helping her understand how they'd dismantled his company. Mrs. Zhang from Media Fusion had provided crucial introductions to ethical hackers who were helping decrypt more of Marcus's files. Your mother's latest scan, May said softly, sliding over an envelope. The jade bangle had bought them more than intelligence. It had led to a connection with a renowned oncologist who'd been another victim of Rivaltech's schemes. He was treating Lin quietly at a private clinic, understanding their need for discretion. Sophia opened the envelope, tears threatening as she read the results. The tumor's shrinking, she whispered. Another reason to make this work. Her phone chimed. A message from Marcus himself. He'd taken the bait faster than expected, already asking to meet Soo-jin for coffee to discuss investment opportunities. Sophia smiled, remembering how he used the same approach on her 3 years ago. The pieces were falling into place. Her father, energized by their progress, had quietly begun consulting for small tech firms under a pseudonym. His insights were helping Sophia understand exactly how valuable the stolen technology was and how to prove its origins. Victoria's getting suspicious, Mai reported, scrolling through social media. She's been asking questions about Soo-jin's background. The engagement photos of Marcus and Victoria still stung, but now they were useful intel. Every public appearance, every tagged location helped Sophia track their movements. Let her ask, Sophia said, applying the perfect shade of Korean brand lipstick. By the time they figure it out, it'll be too late. Their makeshift command center had moved from the tiny apartment to the back office of Mrs. Lee's convenience store. The old woman had turned out to be sharper than anyone suspected. Her decades of watching the neighborhood had made her an invaluable source of information about late-night meetings and suspicious deliveries. Sophia picked up her new phone, a high-end model befitting a crypto heiress, and checked the time. The meeting with TechVantage's CFO is in an hour. Once he confirms the pattern of shell companies, then we have the link between all 5 cases, Mai finished. But Sophia, Marcus is dangerous. Today's Korea Herald mentioned another tech CEO who committed suicide after dealing with Rivaltech. I know. Sophia stood, smoothing her carefully selected gentle monster dress. But they've never dealt with someone who knows all their plays. She touched the butterfly necklace, now a reminder of her transformation rather than her naivety. Besides, they taught me well, always record everything, trust no one, and keep your real cards hidden. As if on cue, her father's message arrived. Their ethical hacker contact had finally cracked Harrison's encrypted server. The evidence they'd found in the butterfly pendant was just the tip of the iceberg. Ready? Mi asked, gathering her things. Sophia checked her reflection one last time. The innocent girl who'd celebrated her birthday in the Singapore flyer was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood that sometimes you had to break all the way down to build yourself back up stronger. Time to show them, she said, that the butterfly they thought they'd crushed has learned how to sting. The 1-bedroom apartment in Jaelang smelled of mildew and forgotten dreams. Sophia sat cross-legged on a thin mattress on the floor, watching cockroaches scurry across water-stained walls. 3 weeks had passed since the launch disaster. The Sentosa Cove mansion was now sealed with police tape, their assets frozen pending investigation. The only property they could access was this shabby apartment. Ironically, the same building where her father had started his journey 30 years ago. "Your turn," her mother called weakly from the bathroom. They shared one towel now, taking turns showering with cheap soap that left their skin raw. Lin Chen emerged, her designer clothes replaced by cotton pajamas from a street market. The elegant woman who once hosted charity galas now looked frail, her complexion sallow. Sophia helped her mother to the mattress, trying not to show her panic when she felt how light she'd become. The truth about her mother's condition had emerged during the asset freeze. Stage 3 breast cancer, diagnosed months ago. Lin had hidden it, not wanting to worry her family during Chen Tech's crucial launch period. Now their insurance was suspended, and they couldn't afford the next round of treatment. Her phone, now a prepaid model from 7-Eleven, buzzed with a news alert. She almost ignored it, but the headline made her blood freeze. Societe-Scandale. Marcus Zhang announces engagement to rival tech heiress. The article showed Marcus and Victoria Harrison at the Ritz-Carlton, her old friend wearing Sophia's favorite Van Cleef and Apple's collection. 2 weeks, Sophia whispered, her fingers clenching around the phone. He moved on in 2 weeks. A knock at the door made both women tense. They'd learned to fear knocks, usually reporters or debt collectors. But it was Mrs. Lee from next door, holding a container of soup. "Eat," the elderly woman insisted in Hokkien. "You're too skinny now, girl, all of you." Sophia accepted the soup with a bow, fighting back tears. Their former auntie guards and private chefs had vanished, but this stranger showed more kindness than their entire former social circle. Her father returned late that night, smelling of cigarettes and defeat. His court-appointed lawyer had quit, citing conflict of interest. They all knew what that meant. Rival Tech's influence reached deep into Singapore's legal community. "Any luck?" Lin asked softly, though they already knew the answer. Richard had spent another day begging his old contacts for help, for loans, for anything. But doors that once opened wide now slammed shut. Sophia watched her father slump onto their single chair, his formerly crisp shirts now wrinkled and stained with sweat. Through the thin walls, they could hear their neighbors' lives, children crying, couples arguing, televisions blaring. The noise felt suffocating after the pristine silence of their gated community. Her mother's coughing fit broke the silence. Each hack felt like a physical blow to Sophia's chest. Without thinking, she opened her banking app, staring at the frozen numbers that could save her mother's life. "I saw Marcus today," her father said suddenly. "At the courthouse. He's testifying against us tomorrow." His voice cracked. "That boy ate at our table, called me uncle. And now?" Sophia found him in the bathroom an hour later, staring at a handful of sleeping pills. The sight snapped something inside her. She knocked the pills from his hand. "No," she said firmly. "We're not giving them this victory." She led her father back to their shared mattress, where her mother had finally fallen into an uneasy sleep. In the distance, the Singapore skyline glittered, their former kingdom now a cruel reminder of everything they'd lost. But as Sophia held her broken family, something shifted in her heart. The pampered princess who had lived for social media likes and designer brands was dying. In her place, something harder was being forged. She thought of the evidence hidden in her cloud drive, of Marcus's smug face in the engagement photos, of her mother's untreated cancer. "Watch me," she whispered to the uncaring city lights. "Just watch me." The Marina Bay Sands ballroom hummed with anticipation. Rival Tech's merger announcement party had drawn Singapore's entire tech elite, the same crowd that had witnessed Chen Tech's destruction 6 months earlier. Sophia, still in her Sujin disguise, watched Marcus work the room from her position at the bar. Victoria clung to his arm, both of them radiating triumph. "Ready?" May's voice came through Sophia's hidden earpiece. Outside, a joint task force from the Commercial Affairs Department and Interpol waited for her signal. "Mr. Lim, Mrs. Zhang," and 3 other tech CEOs who'd been victimized by rival tech were stationed strategically throughout the crowd. All the evidence is uploaded, Sophia confirmed, pretending to check her phone. Everything. The SD card files, Harrison's encrypted server data, the shell company traces. It's all queued to display. Your father's standing by with the tech team. Sophia took a deep breath. The last 6 months had changed everything. Her mother's cancer was in remission, responding well to the treatment they could now afford thanks to the secret consulting work her father had done. Their old social circle had abandoned them, but they'd found true allies in unexpected places. Mrs. Lee's network of small business owners, ethical hackers who believed in justice, reporters who wanted the real story. Marcus approached the bar, his smile confident. Su Jin-si, he purred in deliberately accented English. I hope you're ready to announce your investment in our merged company. Of course, Sophia replied in the careful Korean accented English she practiced for months. I just need to verify some final details about the technology patents. She followed him to a private room where James Harrison and Victoria waited. The moment the door closed, Harrison's friendly demeanor vanished. Enough games, he snapped. Who are you really? Sophia felt a familiar flutter of fear, but squashed it. She was no longer that naive 18-year-old. I'm surprised, Uncle James, she said in her natural voice, dropping the Korean accent. Don't you recognize the girl whose life you destroyed? The color drained from Marcus's face. Victoria lunged for the door, but it was already locked, courtesy of the hotel's head of security, another victim of rival Tech's schemes. Sophia, Marcus breathed. How? Did you really think I wouldn't check my birthday present more carefully? She touched the butterfly necklace. You taught me well, always have a backup plan. She pressed a button on her phone. The ballroom screens flickered to life, displaying evidence of years of corporate espionage. Harrison lunged for her, but the door burst open. Officers poured in as the sounds of chaos erupted from the ballroom. You have no proof. Harrison snarled as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Actually, Sophia smiled, we have everything. Every email, every transaction, every doctored video. Did you know Victoria kept a private journal on her cloud drive? She's not as tech-savvy as she thinks. Victoria's face crumpled as she realized her detailed accounts of their schemes had become evidence. Marcus tried one last time. Sophia, please. What we had was real. Save it for your trial. She cut him off. I'm sure the other families you destroyed will be very interested in your testimony. Later that night, Sophia stood in her old home office, now restored to her family. Her father's name had been cleared, their assets unfrozen. Chentech's stock was already rebounding as the truth spread. But Sophia had no interest in returning to her old life. Her experience had shown her a bigger purpose. She touched the acceptance letter from law school, her plan to combine legal expertise with tech knowledge to protect other companies from corporate espionage. Her mother appeared in the doorway, healthy and smiling. Your party guests are arriving, Mai. This celebration was different from her lavish 18th birthday. Gone were the social climbers and false friends. Instead, their living room filled with the people who'd stood by them, Mrs. Lee and her family, me, their fellow victims turned allies, the ethical hackers who'd helped crack the case. Sophia looked around at her real family, blood and chosen, and felt complete. She was no longer the butterfly in the glass cage of privilege, but something stronger, a phoenix risen from the ashes of betrayal, ready to protect others from the fate she'd overcome. Happy 19th birthday, her father said softly. Sophia smiled, knowing that while one chapter of her life had closed, a far more meaningful one was just beginning. Rain pounded against the corrugated metal roof as Sophia sorted through a box of salvaged belongings from their mansion. The police had finally allowed them to collect personal items, though financial documents remained seized. Her fingers brushed against something cold, the butterfly necklace from her birthday. She was about to throw it across the room when she noticed something odd about the pendant's weight. With trembling fingers, she examined the butterfly's intricate design. There, a tiny seam, almost invisible. The pendant clicked open, revealing a micro SD card nestled inside. Sophia's heart raced as she remembered Marcus's words at her party. The butterfly effect. One small action changing everything. Her old MacBook had been sold weeks ago, but Mrs. Lee's grandson had a beat-up Lenovo laptop he'd lent her for job applications. Sophia's hands shook as she inserted the card. File after file appeared. Marcus had been so confident in his scheme that he'd kept a backup of everything. Meeting schedules, surveillance reports, bank transfers tracking millions flowing through shell companies. Found something interesting. Sophia jumped. Her father stood in the doorway, looking older than his 50 years, but with a spark of his old shrewdness in his eyes. She hadn't heard him come home from his new job as a parking attendant. "Dad," she breathed, "look at this." She showed him the emails between Marcus and James Harrison, dating back 2 years. They didn't just steal the AI. They've done this before. To tech companies in Taiwan, Korea, Malaysia. We weren't the first. Richard Chen leaned closer, his reading glasses perched on his nose. These transfer dates, they match when Acer Tech collapsed last year and Media Fusion the year before. His voice grew stronger with each word. Sophia opened another folder. Here's proof the surveillance footage was doctored. And look, Harrison's daughter Victoria was part of it from the start. She's not just Marcus's new fiancée, she's been helping coordinate their operations. The prosecutors won't look at this, her father said bitterly. Harrison has them all in his pocket. Then we don't go to them yet. Sophia straightened, a plan forming. We find the other victims. Build a network. Gather more evidence. She pulled up a news article about Acer's fallen CEO. Mr. Lim still runs a small consulting firm. And Media Fusion's founder teaches at NUS now. Her father's eyes widened as he followed her thinking. A class action case, with multiple victims coming forward, would be harder to bury, Sophia finished. She opened her notes app, where she'd been tracking Marcus's movements through social media. He's getting sloppy, Dad. Success is making them arrogant. Yesterday, Victoria posted about a secret project at the same location where TechVantage's CEO reported suspicious activity. A coughing fit from the other room interrupted them. Lynn emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in a thin robe. "What are you two plotting?" Sophia quickly explained. Her mother listened, then disappeared back into the bedroom. She returned with a jade bangle, her last valuable possession, meant to pay for next week's treatment. "Sell it," Lynn said firmly. "Use the money for what you need. I can miss one treatment." "Mom, no." "Yes." Lynn's voice was steel. "I've watched you these past weeks. Taking that waitressing job at Clark Quay, swallowing your pride when old friends pretend not to see you. You're not just my daughter anymore. You're a warrior." Sophia felt tears threaten but held them back. The old Sophia would have cried. The new one was learning to turn pain into fuel. Her phone buzzed. A message from her new job at a trendy bar near Marcus's favorite clubs. Perfect vantage point for gathering intelligence, though serving drinks to her former social circle stung her pride mightily. "I have to go," she said, standing. But first, she opened her laptop's camera and snapped a photo of the most damning evidence. A little insurance, backed up to multiple clouds. She looked at her parents. "They think we're finished, but they forgot something important." "What's that?" her father asked. Sophia smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it reached her eyes. "You taught me that the most dangerous moment is when your enemy thinks they've already won." The Singapore Flyers glass capsule gleamed against the setting sun as Sophia Chen stepped inside, her Ginny Choo heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Her heartbeat quickened as Marcus Dang, her boyfriend of 2 years, covered her eyes with silk-soft hands. The private capsule, adorned with thousands of fairy lights and cream roses, took her breath away when she finally opened her eyes. "Happy birthday, my love," Marcus whispered, his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit complementing her champagne-colored Ely Sab gown. At 18, Sophia felt like she was living in a modern fairy tale. The cityscape stretched out below them, a tapestry of lights and possibilities that seemed to mirror her own bright future. The evening had started at the Ritz-Carlton, where her father, Richard Chen, had booked the grand ballroom for her birthday celebration. The guest list read like a who's who of Singapore's tech elite, CEOs, venture capitalists, and their perfectly groomed offspring. Sophia had grown up among them. But unlike many of her peers, she prided herself on staying grounded. Her father's rags to riches story, from a small apartment in Geylang to founding Chentech Solutions, had taught her the value of humility. As they ascended in the observation wheel, Marcus poured Dom Perignon into crystal flutes. To us he smiled, his dark eyes reflecting the city lights. And to your acceptance into ANSEAD's Young Business Leaders program. Sophia couldn't help but notice how the ambient lighting caught the sharp angles of his jaw, making him look like he'd stepped out of a luxury magazine spread. Their romance had blossomed at United World College, where they'd bonded over shared dreams of revolutionizing Asia's tech landscape. Marcus, now a pre-law student at Yale U.S. College, came from old money, but his drive matched Sophia's own ambition. Their relationship was the talk of their social circle, the perfect merger of new money's innovation and old money's prestige. The capsule reached its apex, offering a panoramic view of Marina Bay. Below them, the iconic triple towers of Marina Bay Sands pierced the sky, their infinity pool a thin line of blue against the sunset. Sophia's father's newest office building stood proudly among them, its revolutionary green architecture a testament to his forward-thinking vision. Look, Marcus pointed toward the harbor, where a fleet of boats had arranged themselves to spell out Sophia 18 in LED lights. She gasped, touching the Van Cleef and Arpels necklace he'd given her earlier, a butterfly design that symbolized her transformation into adulthood. Their perfect moment was interrupted by the sharp ring of a phone. Sophia's father, still at the Ritz-Carlton, was calling. She noticed Marcus tense slightly as she answered. Richard Chen's voice sounded strained, despite his attempt at casualness. "Sweetheart, everything's fine, but I need to step out for an emergency board meeting. Enjoy your evening with Marcus. We'll celebrate more when you return." Something in her father's tone set off a subtle alarm in Sophia's mind. In 15 years of running Chentech, he'd never left a family celebration for work. She'd caught the edge of worry in his voice, the same tone he'd used 3 years ago when their AI project had almost failed. "Is everything okay, Dad?" she asked, watching Marcus from the corner of her eye as he typed rapidly on his phone. Of course, Mai. He used his pet name for her, meaning beautiful in Mandarin. Just some investors from Shanghai with time zone confusion. Nothing to worry about. As she hung up, Marcus was already steering the conversation toward their upcoming winter break plans in Hokkaido. Sophia allowed herself to be distracted by his elaborate descriptions of private onsens and Michelin-starred dinners, but a tiny part of her mind lingered on her father's call. The observation wheel began its descent, and Sophia caught her reflection in the glass, designer dress, perfect makeup, imported champagne in hand. Everything in her world seemed polished to a brilliant shine. Yet as the capsule lowered, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was also descending into something else entirely, something hidden beneath the glittering surface of her golden life. 3 weeks after her birthday celebration, Sophia sat in her father's home office, absently tracing the leather grain of his Italian desk chair while waiting for Marcus to return from the bathroom. The evening had started normally enough, a family dinner where her mother's new chef had outdone himself with a fusion of French and Chinese cuisine. But something felt off. She glanced at the wall of achievements, her father's Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year award, photos with tech luminaries, the frame containing Chentech's first $1 million contract. The office still smelled of the sandalwood incense her grandmother insisted on burning for good fortune. A new installation of state-of-the-art security cameras blinked silently in the corners. Her father's recent paranoia about corporate espionage had led to upgraded security throughout their Sentosa Cove mansion. The soft click of a camera shutter made her spin around. Marcus stood in the doorway, his iPhone quickly disappearing into his pocket. "Sorry, you looked so beautiful lost in thought," he smiled, but something about his expression seemed rehearsed. "Your father's desk makes quite the power backdrop. Were you photographing me or the desk?" Sophia meant it as a joke, but Marcus's laugh came a beat too late. A law student's curiosity about successful CEOs, he shrugged, sliding closer to massage her shoulders. "Speaking of your father, have you noticed how tense he's been lately?" Indeed, she had. Richard Chen had been holding whispered conversations in his study late at night. His normally pristine desk was cluttered with documents marked confidential, and he'd been spending more time at the office than at home. Even more unsettling was the sudden resignation of Aunt Jenny, not really her aunt, but her father's executive assistant of 15 years, who'd known Sophia since childhood. Jenny's departure was quite abrupt, Marcus probed, his fingers working knots in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. Your father must be struggling to replace someone so knowledgeable about company operations. Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed. It was a message from me, her best friend since primary school. Check your IG comments. Something weird is happening. Sophia opened Instagram to find dozens of new comments on her recent photos. Anonymous accounts were posting cryptic questions. Where did the Chen money really come from? Ask your father about Project Phoenix. What happened to the original AI code? Trolls, Marcus said dismissively, but his hand tightened slightly on her shoulder. Every successful family attracts jealous attention. Later that week, at the annual Tech Innovation Gala, Sophia watched Marcus from across the room. He was deep in conversation with James Harrison, CEO of Rivaltech, Chentech's biggest competitor. When she approached, both men startled like guilty schoolboys. Sophia darting. Harrison recovered first. We were just discussing Yale's alumni network. I didn't know you were a Yale man, Uncle James, Sophia said, using the respectful term for her father's business acquaintance. She distinctly remembered Harrison bragging about being Harvard-educated at every opportunity. Oh well, not directly, he fumbled. Marcus smoothly steered the conversation toward the gala's charity auction. That night, Sophia lay awake in her bedroom, where the view of Singapore's harbor usually brought her peace. Instead, she found herself cataloging inconsistencies. Marcus's recent habit of showing up unannounced at her father's office, his growing interest in Chentech's operations, the way he deflected questions about his future law firm internship. Her phone buzzed again, an anonymous email this time. Your boyfriend isn't who you think he is. Check his registration at Yale in US. Sophia's finger hovered over the delete button, but something stopped her. On her desk, the butterfly necklace from her birthday caught the moonlight, casting strange shadows on the wall. The same weird feeling from the observation wheel returned, that sensation of everything being just slightly off, like a picture hung millimeters askew. In the distance, she heard her father's voice, sharp with anger through the study walls. How did they know about the prototype? Nobody outside the core team had access to those files. Sophia closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The warning signs were adding up, each one a small crack in her perfect world. The Maldives villa's infinity pool reflected a perfect full moon as Sophia sat cross-legged on the deck, her MacBook open before her. Marcus's soft snoring drifted through the open sliding doors behind her. The romantic getaway had been his idea, a surprise trip to disconnect and rejuvenate. Yet he'd spent most of their first day on urgent business calls, speaking in hushed tones from the beach. A notification popped up on her laptop. Storage sync complete. Sophia frowned. She hadn't initiated any sync. Then she noticed her device had automatically connected to Marcus's cloud. His laptop must have been set as a trusted device during one of their study sessions. Her cursor hovered over the notification. Every value her parents had instilled in her screamed that opening his files would be a breach of trust. But then she remembered the mysterious photos in her father's office, the whispered conversation with Harrison, Jenny's sudden departure. With trembling fingers, she clicked. Folders appeared, dozens of them, meticulously organized. Most contained standard university materials, but one caught her eye. Chen_Operation_2024. Her heart stopped. The folder name matched a phrase she'd overheard Marcus speaking on the phone earlier. Chen Op is proceeding ahead of schedule. The first file was a PDF titled Subject Profile, Richard Chen. It contained detailed surveillance photos of her father, entering his office, meeting clients, even playing golf at their private club. Each photo was annotated with times, dates, and notes about his routine. Some had been taken long before she'd even met Marcus. Asset cultivation proceeding as planned, read one note. Subject's daughter successfully engaged, maintaining cover through planned social events and family integration. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, muffling a gasp. The butterfly necklace at her throat suddenly felt like it was choking her. A subfolder labeled Phase 3 contained email threads between Marcus and multiple email addresses. She recognized one, james.h@revoltech.com, James Harrison's private email. The messages detailed a complex scheme to infiltrate Chentech through a combination of social engineering, corporate espionage, and strategic relationships. The daughter remains unaware. Marcus had written 3 months ago. Her access to the family compound and Chen's trust have proven invaluable. Attached are the photos of the new AI architecture blueprints from his home office. Video files filled another folder. With shaking hands, Sophia played one. It showed the interior of her family's home. Their private conversations at dinner, her father's late-night calls in his study, even her mother's private art studio. Their entire life had been under surveillance. A document titled Final Timeline revealed the endgame. Next week, during Chentech's major AI platform launch, Revoltech would release evidence that the technology had been stolen. The carefully planted trail would lead directly to her father, while Marcus would emerge as an unwitting witness, his law student background lending credibility to his shocking discovery of the corporate theft. Target's pride in self-made status makes him particularly vulnerable. Read Marcus's psychological analysis. Daughter's romantic attachment provides perfect cover and alibi. Recommend proceeding with Phase 3 as planned. Sophia scrolled through page after page of betrayal, each word destroying her world more thoroughly than the last. Photos of herself appeared, laughing with Marcus at parties, sleeping on his shoulder during flights, kissing him at her birthday celebration. Each moment of happiness had been documented as proof of a successful infiltration. Her laptop pinged again. A new email arrived in the synchronized account. Operation is go. Chen's security team has been compromised. Launch day proceedings finalized. Destroy all backup data after completion. In the bedroom, Marcus stood. Sophia heard him getting up, his footsteps approaching the deck. With quick, silent movements, she copied essential files to her cloud drive and closed the laptop. When he emerged, she was pretending to stare at the moon's reflection, her face carefully composed while her mind raced through the implications of everything she'd discovered. "Can't sleep, beautiful?" he asked, dropping a kiss on her head. "Just thinking about next week's launch," she replied, amazed at how steady she kept her voice. "It's going to be quite an event, isn't it?" "You have no idea," he smiled, and Sophia felt sick at the genuine warmth in his voice. She'd fallen in love with a ghost, a carefully constructed delusion, and now she had 7 days to prevent her family's destruction. The Chentech launch event transformed the Marina Bay Sands Convention Center into a futuristic wonderland. Holographic displays showcased the new AI platform's capabilities, while Singapore's tech elite mingled over champagne and canapés. Sophia stood beside her father on stage during the final soundcheck, her channel dress feeling like armor. For 6 days, she'd carried the weight of Marcus's betrayal, unable to warn her father without risking the evidence she'd gathered. Nervous, my. Richard Chen adjusted his Hermes tie, the same lucky one he'd worn to every major launch since founding Chentech. "Just excitement," Sophia lied, her eyes scanning the gathering crowd. She spotted Marcus near the front, looking impeccable in a navy suit. Their eyes met, and he smiled. That same warm smile that had once made her heart flutter but now made her stomach turn. The presentation began perfectly. Her father was in his element, showcasing how their AI could revolutionize everything from healthcare to climate change. The audience was enraptured, investors were nodding appreciatively, and tech journalists were frantically taking notes. Then everything shattered. First, every screen in the convention center suddenly switched to display a single message: "Still in technology alert." Security footage appeared, showing what seemed to be Richard Chen in a restricted area of Revoltech's research facility. Sophia recognized the careful video editing from the files she'd discovered, but to everyone else, it looked devastatingly real. James Harrison stood up from the front row. "I'm sorry, Richard, but we can't allow this fraud to continue." He gestured, and uniformed officers entered from every door. "The evidence of intellectual property theft is overwhelming." Sophia watched in horror as her father's face transformed from confusion to shock to devastating comprehension. Marcus stepped forward, his expression a masterpiece of reluctant duty. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. When I discovered the truth during my internship research," he turned to Sophia, tears in his eyes that she now knew were as fake as everything else about him. "Sophia, I never wanted to hurt you, but the law is clear." The officers approached the stage. Her father reached for the microphone. "This is a mistake." But his words were drowned out by the chaos erupting in the hall. Investors rushed to distance themselves. Reporters shoved forward for better photos. And Sophia heard the distinctive sound of stock trading apps pinging as Chen Tech shares plummeted in real time. "Dad!" Sophia moved to protect her father, but Marcus caught her arm. "Don't make this worse," he whispered, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Think of your mother." The mention of her mother froze Sophia in place. In the confusion, only she saw Harrison's subtle nod to Marcus, a gesture of approval for a job well done. She watched helplessly as officers led her father away, his lucky tie askew, his dignity intact even as photographers' flashes turned the moment into tomorrow's headlines. Her phone exploded with notifications. Bank accounts frozen, credit cards suspended, social media flooded with #ChenTechFraud hashtags. Then came the text from her mother. "Come home now. They're searching the house." Outside the convention center, reporters swarmed like piranhas. Marcus played his role perfectly, shielding Sophia from cameras while delivering sound bites about his shock and disappointment. She noticed how carefully he positioned himself in every shot, how smoothly he worked in mentions of his law school credentials. The Rolls-Royce that had brought them to the event was gone. Their driver had already jumped ship. Sophia stood in her couture dress as Singapore's fickle elite streamed past, their faces carefully turned away from the family they'd been courting just hours before. A taxi driver, perhaps the only person there who didn't know what had just happened, pulled up. Where to, miss? Sophia stared at the convention center's gleaming facade, where workers were already taking down the Chentech banners. In her clutch, her phone contained copies of Marcus's files, evidence that could clear her father, but would take time to verify. Time they didn't have. "Chanji," she said quietly, naming their home address. "While we still have one."